This week on Watchmen Rewinds, we're talking about Furiosa. Furiosa and sugar. Spice. No, not spice, although spice is now out on HBO Max. We're also going to have some recommendations that are not spicy or Furiosa related. But, Bruno, let's get started.
It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
I will be your champion.
This better not awaken anything in me.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
That is the meaning of inner strength.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I'm responsible for my own happiness. I can't even be responsible for my own breakfast.
We have Santa Claus. One does not simply walk into Mordor. Assemble.
All right, welcome to Watchmen Reviews. We're here to talk about all things movies and things that we love about movies, and we love movies, so here we are to talk about them. I'm Deepak Chitnis, Site's film critic, senior chief, whatever, only film critic, and I'm joined, of course, by the man who incepted Nerded Here First, Ryley Trahan.
Don't let me get out of here without the kick.
And the architect, Bruno.
Did they have it in them to make it epic?
You must not be afraid to make it epic, Tom.
What's the reference here? Is this Incredibles?
Well, it's a little bit of both, because in Furiosa, he says...
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Right, but then also Tom Hardy says, you must not be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling. So
That's fair.
All right, well, I don't know a better segue than me stumbling headfirst into
Furiosa.
Furiosa.
Bruno, did you... you were not a part of the text chain earlier where Deepak suggested to me that the two topics that we were talking about today, Furiosa and sugar, if put together,
Yes.
sounded like they were perhaps a metaphor for cocaine.
Not a metaphor, just a street name.
Furiosa sugar.
The nom de plume.
I could see Sugar Furiosa. That definitely sounds like some cartel level shit. I'm sorry, are we past 8 seconds? Yes, we are. I can say shit.
There we go. All right, so we're starting off with Furiosa, and that's probably the thing more people have seen. Although, can I start with, and maybe
Yeah, I don't know how many people have really seen it.
That's the thing I want to throw out there is, what the fuck? Why is no one seeing this movie?
I mean, the first one, whatever. Fury Road did not light the box office on fire back in 2015 either. It was 9 years ago. It did really well in the awards, but I'm surprised it won the box office. I thought Garfield was going to be a bigger mover.
But
they didn't really.
Shouldn't even have been a competition. This thing should have blown. Like, if this is not what adult audiences are showing up for at the box office, then I don't know what it is. Like, the last one was, as you say, an awards darling, right?
Yeah.
It has this big kind of prestige footprint. I think you can go up to the normie who doesn't listen to a movie podcast and say, hey, do you remember Mad Max Fury Road? And they will say, holy shit, I loved that movie. It's very weird to me that the audience...
I have
how many non-movie nerds really love Fury Road?
So
I think...
that's the thing, because I do think Fury Road was one of those movies that like didn't actually start getting mainstream traction until award season, and until it started getting all of those nominations and everything like that. Such that I have like a handful of friends that didn't watch Fury Road for the first time until 2 weeks ago, when the movie was set to come out.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a cultural footprint it really has. But Ryley, you and I being in the bubble that talks about this stuff all the time, and we saw it when it came out. Like we knew what we were going in for. But yeah, I don't know if it was a marketing thing with this, that people didn't know if this was a sequel, if this was a prequel. Why are we calling it a Mad Max Saga if there's no Max? Is this like, a Star Wars story, that kind of thing? Where does this, everything is about continuity and chronology, and
it's
I don't know if that's where Warner Brothers has had a habit of doing this, by the way, where they don't know how to title or market their sequels. Read Blade Runner 2049, read Doctor Sleep, read, now 2 Mad Max sequels to a franchise from the 80s that they have not been able to properly harness at the box office, even though all the movies are really good. So
I'm sorry.
Is it a studio issue?
I'm kind of catching something that I didn't think we were gonna have to address today. Deepak, did you not like Furiosa?
No, I thought it was okay. I didn't dislike it.
Well, and we're gonna get into this point more in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Listen, if I'm before we get into the substance of Furiosa proper, which I would very much like us to get into, I think I do genuinely believe, and perhaps I'm wrong here, right? But I do genuinely believe that there were folks who were ready to be on board for this movie, because I do think that Mad Max Fury Road had like a very populist like grassroots level support. And what 30 is it 30 million Deepak at the box office over opening weekend?
30 million, but I don't remember if that's domestic or worldwide.
I do think it's domestic.
It was 32 domestic by Sunday, I believe.
56 maybe worldwide. Like it's
on a 168 budget, was it?
Right, which is really the worst part of it, especially coming off of whatever 300 years of longing. I think there's going to be a challenge. This movie needs to have legs, and I think it absolutely deserves to have legs. I hope that everyone who sees Furiosa goes to all of their friends who haven't seen Furiosa and just scream at them as loud as they can about how they have to go see Furiosa. I think this is a movie that absolutely deserves to be seen on the big screen. I saw it in IMAX at the Smithsonian on the biggest IMAX screen on the East Coast, at least a couple,
Did it have expanded picture?
Oh, this thing was fucking huge, man.
Okay.
Mags and I were sitting there together, and we both afterwards were like we had fully dialed into the reality of the size of this movie absolutely helped it. I think we're both captivated by the reality of the film, and people will watch the trailer and maybe have a little bit of a laugh about Hemsworth's villain character, or in Anya Taylor-Joy's like big-eyed, heroine, whatever. I don't think there's a single moment of this movie that doesn't fucking hit the assignment square on, full out of the park. I think this movie is a home run. I think if you can see it on the largest format possible, you should. I was sitting around just at work today thinking, God, I wish I was watching Furiosa right now. I definitely want to go see it at least 2 more times. I want one of those times to be in 4DX because I heard that the people who saw it in 4DX had a little bit of water sprayed on them when the Piss Boy showed up. I also want to encourage you to follow my new Tumblr, which is pissboy.tumblr.com, which is all about the Piss Boy. And I fucking loved this movie. I can't get enough of Mad Max, and I hope Mad Max Wasteland works. I hope that they do 2 more of them. I hope Tom Hardy loses his fucking mind and is committed to a mental asylum because George Miller pushed him too far in the Mad Max franchise. I love these goddamn movies. Mad Max for life. You guys out.
Bruno, what did you think of it?
What a lovely day!
So, God, there's a lot to unpack there. I agree that it was.
Don't unpack it. Just it's TSA rules. If you see strange luggage, just notify an attendant.
You throw that off to somebody else, and you go back to doing your thing.
You pass that buck, son. You pass that buck.
If I were to very, very much nitpick at this movie, then I wouldn't call it a home run. But that being said, I still think that this was probably visually the best movie out of 2024 so far. I think that there was a lot of like improvements. I understand that there may be some disagreements, but I generally see that there was a lot of improvements from Mad Max Fury Road when it comes to the visuals as well as the acting. The pacing, I can understand why some people had issues with it, but I really enjoyed it personally, and I thought there was a lot of gambles that George Miller took with the writing that I think is already very publicly known, that it's gambles that he pulled off during Fury Road and that he just kept around for Furiosa. And I think those paid off well when it came to just having basically the whole story be like from the point of view of a history man or a ward burger, however you want to call it, or just the entire idea of having it like framed like a book where you're like taking the story chapter by chapter by chapter. I thought that was really good. I thought it was like an intriguing like turn of pace from Mad Max Fury Road. You guys heard it from me yourselves that I was very worried when some of the early reviews said that it was a very different like gear shift from Fury Road, and that like genuinely worried me. But those worries were tossed aside by the time I was done with Furiosa.
Chitty, I feel like you had a. I have. I want to speak to some of the stuff Bruno just spoke to, but I feel like you will probably have bigger things to say about a lot of that stuff. How did those sort of stylistic decisions about how to tell the story affect your overall view of the film? I mean, you're no fan of voiceover, for example.
No, the structure of it, as far as being kind of like what you were saying, a storybook is fine. Where my problem was is that as a origin story, for lack of a better term, of Furiosa, I don't know that this did it. It felt more like an origin story about the wasteland,
But it
and
is
her sort of Forrest Gumping her way through it. Some with interactions with some famous characters in the time before Fury Road, and that was my issue with it structurally. I didn't think that it felt too long. I remember Ryley and I were talking before the movie, and I thought it was an hour and 48 minutes, not 148 minutes. But I thought the time went by fine because there's plenty going on.
Mhm.
I just don't know that the movie at the end of the day, and I have yet to rewatch Fury Road after seeing Furiosa, but having seen Fury Road in the last year or so, I don't know that there is anything about this new movie that if I go back and watch Fury Road really enhances it. Like I think Fury Road still feels self-contained, viable, organic on its own, and other than some cute references to this is how she knows the people in that mountain pass from the really cool motorcycle chase, some things like that. I don't know that I really felt anything here was crucial or added necessary texture. But it was fine. It's fine as like an action epic. Like it's an entertaining, solid, well-made movie. I mean, as far as the visuals go, Bruno, the reason I reacted like that is because I felt, and I saw it in Dolby Cinema, so I didn't see it in IMAX, but Dolby Vision grading and all of that. I didn't think it looked very good. I thought the what do you call it? The compositing work was very bad. The visual effects I know can be pretty cartoonish, even in Fury Road. Here, it felt more like a technical shortcoming rather than a creative choice a little bit. There's a different cinematographer this time. John Seal shot Fury Road, who's one of the all-time greats from The English Patient and other things. And the new one is shot by Simon Duggan, who I'm sure is a very competent DP, but for whatever reason, it just didn't come together as much in this one. Now, camera movement, fluidity, all that, 100%. They nailed it. The editing, they nailed it. But from a technical perspective, I was actually a little disappointed with this movie, I'll be honest. But again, I didn't hate it. I didn't dislike it. I just didn't think it was amazing.
No,
maybe it just wasn't what I was expecting. Because I remember being a little lukewarm on Fury Road initially too, and then it really came around on it. So, maybe that'll happen here.
That's interesting because when I mentioned nitpicks earlier, they would only be like nitpicks towards the story. I wouldn't really have anything when it came to the sound or the visuals. I really think those were like top notch. But
the sound was good.
I just think it's interesting to see like different opinions. What do you think, Ryley?
I think one of the really fascinating parts of Furiosa is that it serves as an almost Rogue One style composite to Fury Road, a la Rogue One to the original Star Wars A New Hope. You could absolutely put on Furiosa and then take the disc out, put it back in the case, and put in the disc for Fury Road and just ride that 7-hour high or whatever it is, and I think that would work perfectly. Aside from that, though, I think, and I'm sort of trying to speak to a couple of the deficiencies that Deepak was sort of citing. I think that the Furiosa, for example, there is a scene in Mad Max, right, where they finally get to what used to be the green place, and Furiosa is talking to the mothers, and they say, what happened to your mother, and she says she died on the third day, right? And when we see that in Mad Max, there is sort of a generalized sadness there, but now having seen Furiosa and seeing how early the third day was, and the fact that Furiosa could have gotten away on the third day, but she ran back because of her dedication to her mother. I just feel like this movie has so much going on, has such a
Doesn't
sincere heart
Furiosa
to
see
it.
the mother die?
She
She
does.
does, yes.
She does. But she could have gotten away. But
Who
instead,
who has the line in Fury Road that she died on the third day?
Theron.
Oh, okay. She's telling them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they say where in Fury Road, when we know nothing
I
about
know.
Furiosa, they
Right
just
before
ask,
she screams, she does the big scream in the
right. They ask Furiosa what happened to your mother, and Furiosa says she died on the third day. And now that we know how young Furiosa was when the day count started, right, we get this incredibly jostling experience of this very, very young Furiosa 3 days into being human trafficked, having to grapple with the idea and the direct experience of her mother dying because she chose to go back, right? And the idea that she chose to return, and that sort of hooks her into this whole system of oppression that eventually shits her out the other side as the Imperator. I think that was a really positively gripping thing about this movie. I mean, I went,
agree.
like, as I said, I went and saw it on the biggest screen I possibly could. I felt like I was utterly transported in this movie, in a way that maybe I haven't been since Fury Road, right? And this is, I just think an absolute triumph of the form. I love this movie so much. If you haven't gone to see it yet in a theater and you are hearing me talk about it, what are you waiting for? Go right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like she's fully formed at the beginning of the movie. I don't know that she changes. She's always a silent, gritting her teeth, glaring badass.
I mean,
and things happen to her over the course of the movie, and we see the pieces of her fall into place. She cuts her hair. She loses her arm. Oh, they steal the Death Star plans. Oh, that's the droid that we see in the original doing this and that. Fine, I get the Rogue One of it, but Rogue One is also my least favorite Star Wars movie in large part because of how unnecessary and just, again, it's the worst thing any movie can be, especially these kinds of movies, is boring. And Rogue One is boring because I don't think it justifies its own existence. And I might argue the same thing about Furiosa, although to a lesser extent, because it's still, I mean, I don't want to compare the two at a quality level. Furiosa is a better movie than Rogue One. But yeah, I don't know how flattering the comparison is, I guess, at least for me. Sorry, Bruno, you were going to say something.
No, I mean, like, mainly touching off of what, like, Ryley had said about just the beginning of the movie. And I've noted this is going to be contrary to, like, popular opinions of just, like, what I've seen of people coming out of the movie that were, like, a little bit disappointed in not Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Joy only showing up, like, I clocked it. It was exactly an hour into the movie.
Is it an hour?
But contrary to most people, I wanted more a Lila Brown in this movie, or a Leela Brown. I don't know how. Apologies for not knowing how.
Oh, she's the younger version of it.
She did so well.
I wanted the younger Furiosa a lot for this whole movie, and I thought like that she played that very well. Not only the dynamic between her and her mother, but also the dynamic between her and Chris Hemsworth's character of the Menezes, because like with the whole, I don't want to get into spoilers, but just like an almost like surrogate father relationship that he's imposing at the very beginning. I thought that was really well played out.
I'll build off that to say, and I would love to hear what either of y'all have in your minds about this, but for me, one of the biggest questions that I sort of had dangling after I walked out of the theaters on this movie was, what is the meaning of, sort of the difference of Dr. Dementis versus the Red Dementis versus the the Death Dementis, right? He sort of goes through these different phases. He sort of starts off as a sort of utilitarianist, and then I think moves on to being a sort of hyperbolic
Demigod.
communist, and then sort of moves on to being almost a fascist, right? And what do I was when he turns into a communist, his beard is all shaded red, but that's almost sort of supposed to be because he just idly wandered through a red smoke cloud. What do you guys make of Dementis as a character, aside from just the absolute joy of Hemsworth going off? Bruno.
Okay. I understand all of like the political analogies and themes that you can pull off of Dementis, but I truly think that like boiling it down to a core, his character was basically just trying very hard to be a king, and at the very start, with his following being seen as a king, maybe even being seen as a good king and as like a fair king. But then we finally get to the Citadel, and we're met with like that like infamous question: what's a king to a god? And then
God to
don't get started. But at that point, but like right at that point, there's like a shift in his character, and everything for him starts going downhill from there. Like it really didn't start going downhill until he decided that he wanted to like push up against Immortan Joe.
I like the Hemsworth performance. I like Hemsworth in general. I think he's underrated. I don't think the character is super interesting in the way that Immortan Joe is probably thinner on paper. He's more of a presence, but he's such a forceful, demonic presence with such a singular, I would dare say, iconic look to him. I don't know that I get that from the Dementis character at any point. Other than that, he is, like most characters in this movie, just sort of a plot device to inspire emotions in Furiosa and or car chases through the wasteland through his decision making. But he's fine. Just typical.
I think he's
the characters from these movies.
I think he served his intention well.
Yeah, I think Hemsworth does the best he can. He serves it well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody on this film is miscast. I do think there is a couple of odd moments where I sort of wonder if Anya Taylor-Joy is even voicing her own character, or if we maybe had a little sneaky bit
She's so good. She sounds exactly like her.
Unless
I need a car.
No. That was
that's the scene though. That's the scene where I wonder if they, had a little bit of ADR, but
because you don't see her say it.
Well, I mean,
no.
There's a lot in this film
absolutely-
that has ADR, but
do
like
not.
that's just following up from Fury Road.
I think my bottom line on this movie is that it's a fucking phenomenon. I think I do genuinely, and recency bias is a thing, but I am sitting here right now thinking I would rather rewatch Furiosa than Fury Road right now. Like if I could pick one to watch. And that's not to say that it is a better movie than Fury Road. I think Fury Road is a like high watermark for the action franchise. I think there are only maybe 2 or 3 action movies that I would say deserve higher marks than Fury Road. But I'm just saying, like, Furiosa is, I can't even explain to you how that thing works, right? Like it is positively anomalous in its entire creation, right? Like Miller clearly came to it with a couple of things that didn't work in Fury Road, and a few new ideas, and a few things that had always been ideas that he couldn't quite squash in, and he turned those all into a sort of souffle, and he put it in the oven for 375, and he took it out and he went, holy shit. And now we're all sitting here going, yeah, no, very good, very, very, very good. Yeah, we're thumbs up. So yeah, Furiosa. I think I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, when we are doing our best of, I will think Furiosa will probably be my top 3. If it's not, it will have been a very good year. Let's say that.
Here, just a question, because it seems like we simply have categories when we get to our year-end awards. In your guys' opinion, is Furiosa a film or a movie?
Oh, I would say I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to be a ditz, but I would say that I think much like Mad Max Fury Road, this is one of those things that leaches over to both.
I think it's a film that kind of masquerading as a movie. It can be enjoyed at that level.
A lot of people are going to come for it. Yeah,
I think that's a really good way of describing both films. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Coming up next, we're going to talk about Colin Farrell and Sugar.
Deepak, you had recommended that I start watching a show on Apple TV Plus. It was a noir style investigative series starring Colin Farrell, and our guy was
Excuse me, Jesus.
From episode to episode, sort of deploying different classic Hollywood tropes to help him solve the mystery. But at a certain point, the whole thing busted wide open, and it sort of became more of a paranormal event. But before
Okay, hold on, Bruno. Have you seen this?
Are you asking who?
Have you seen it? You.
Me? Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it all the way through, and I'm kind of questioning Ryley's like whole like paranormal shift, because like
it's not paranormal. It's
science.
Whatever it is, I don't think it's necessarily considered like a big shift. It doesn't happen until like very late in the show.
Right. This is my point. Sorry, maybe you weren't listening. What I had said was, we start the series with a pretty classic noir style structure. And then pretty late in the game, we sort of divulge into maybe not a paranormal, but a science fiction-esque subplot that I don't think takes away from the overall story at all. But I do think it requires a pretty elastic mind to sort of fold in what I think, honestly, I would call a twist for twist's sake. I understand the argument against it, but I am here to say I think it is a twist for a twist's sake, and I don't necessarily think the show is any better for it.
So when this show first started, when I first started watching it the week it came out, I immediately remember thinking, oh, he's playing the kind of character that just doesn't exist, because he looks amazing, wears the best clothes, drives the best cars, has the best job in the world, travels to all the nicest places, knows every language. I'm like, oh yeah, this character does not exist.
Can't get drunk.
Exactly. And little did I know at that time what gets revealed at the end of, I think it's episode 6 out of 8.
6, yep.
Which is that he is in fact an alien, an actual alien, not like an illegal immigrant alien, but like an outer space alien. He is part of he's a part of a secret society of aliens, as it turns out, that are here essentially just kind of living on Earth and trying to understand Earth, and they're here to monitor but not interfere. They say repeatedly. But anyway, going back to what you were saying, Ryley, I fully agree that I don't know that I hated or loved the twist in and of itself. I just don't know what it added to the show. I think if the show is still a noir that's played perfectly straight as a noir, it still works about as well. The story resolves pretty much in the same fashion. We have more or less the same hooks for a sequel season as we would, regardless of if he's on planet, off planet. Simply becomes you've been forsaken by the agency, or the agency has taken you back. We see Ethan Hunt get disavowed in every single movie, so maybe that's the pattern they're going to use here too. But it's an entertaining genre exercise, and Colin Farrell is amazing in it as usual. A lot of really good actors, Amy Ryan and why am I forgetting his name? James Cromwell, and we have Anna Gunn for Breaking Bad.
Rob Corddry's little brother, Nate.
Yep. Oh, who plays the son?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he does look like him a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a bit of like a
What'd you think,
prediction for just Rob Corddry coming back in like a future second or third season as just like a more dysfunctional son out of that family.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't know about.
but no, I thought it was really good. I think on top of like the very classic noir elements that they had this like I don't know what to call this genre, but other than just like a love letter to cinema in general,
Mm.
the because the main character is like a huge movie buff, and not only do we see a lot of intercuts between his actions and actions from like classic movie scenes, but whenever he's interrogating the suspects, most of these suspects are like enveloped in the film industry, so their interrogations were always like edited in a certain way where you almost got the feeling like, oh, they rehearsed this like a few times, and I thought that was like a really good like addition to detail in the show as well.
That parallel style of editing where he kind of has the same conversation with 7 people at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and we're getting the montage of it as they're hitting the bricks and trying to like find Olivia, right? Or
Right.
he'll be at a movie premiere talking to like the studio boss, and it'll cut to like Humphrey Bogart talking to a studio boss in an old Humphrey Bogart movie at the same time
I
that we
mean,
hear Colin Farrell. And it's that Fernando Morales. I can't pronounce his last name. I apologize, but
Fernando Menezes. Yes, that was another thing. Like
it's his style of editing.
you guys suggested the show to me, and I was going in completely blind. I had seen the trailer months ago, and the only reaction I
Mhm.
had towards the trailer, other than like it seems like a good noir, the only reaction that I really had towards it was like, why is Colin Farrell doing this and not Penguin? And then I started watching the show, and I started catching all of these like little um Meireles like details because I've seen him in City of God like more than a
Mhm.
few times. I've seen that movie, and I was just blown away, and that just like pulled me right the fuck in.
Yeah, it's I know I've read an interview after the big twist happened where they said they weren't sure exactly where they wanted to put that
Mm-hmm.
in the season. Did they want it to be something that we knew early? Do they want to keep that from us? Where do they drop it? How do they drop it? Um, so yeah, I mean, have you guys seen Fargo, the show?
Yes.
You guys seen the first
Yeah.
couple seasons of Fargo?
I've seen the first two seasons and the movie. Yeah.
Do you remember how the second season sort of ends where there's a big shootout at the hotel
Mm.
and then that happens?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of reminded me of that for obvious reasons. It's kind of a make or break sort of like a whoa, oh, I did not see that coming.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I seriously respect this show for like holding back the alien twist up until episode 6, because like I was always catching like very small details that something was off with him and his like quote unquote secret society, but the that's the maximum that I had like thought up until that point was just like a
Yeah,
secret
it's he's like some
society.
secret agent or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
some
And like
black ops guy.
there would be points where he would like forget the words in English, but he would know the words in other languages. But like I wouldn't really think of that as like something alien. I'd just be like, oh, he just learned like multiple languages at once. I learned Portuguese and English at the same time, and I'm like constantly having the same issue. But yeah,
Mhm.
no. And then like when it got to episode 6, and it really hit it, like it caught me off guard, but in a way that like I really appreciated and I really like respected.
So where do you think Ryley they go from here? Like there obviously there are some story seeds that they've let in the ground, and we'll see where they sprout. But I mean, does this become more of a sci-fi show going forward? Does this remain more of like a private eye gumshoe noir sort of thing? Do they toe that line? Do they go into a different genre? Like what do you see this becoming? Do you think it gets a second season? First of all, I guess.
It's a funny thing, right? Because it almost feels like the legacy, it's one of those things where it becomes larger than one property itself, right? Like how long can you sort of take the sword and sandals large reptile phenomenon and sort of, stretch it out in different, dress it up in different ways, suss it out in different formats, convince people it doesn't look exactly the same. I feel like that's kind of where we are right now, is like, how can you make your D&D campaign not exactly like somebody else's? And that'll sort of be, where the premium cable space is maybe for the next 5 to 10 years. I would love it if somebody came up with something new, but right now that feels like sort of the slate we're doomed to hook onto is different entities being like, well, here's our king and our wizard and our rogue and our dwarf or whatever, and our elven community who doesn't want any part of it. And yeah, we'll see, I guess. I think consumers are already getting tired of it, so maybe it'll wane out by the time superheroes wane out. We'll find out, but that's where I think we are right now with the sort of sword and sandals genre, which I think our whole sort of conversation thus far has sort of been pointing to as kind of a big general theme. We'll see, I guess. Back to you in the studio.
All right. Finally, after the break, we're going to talk about our recommendations, stuff we've watched recently that we think you guys will like. All right, here we are with recommendation time. Each of us has a movie that we're going to bring to the table that we watched recently or that we just vibed with, whatever, that we think you guys are going to like too. And we'll start with Bruno and go around the horn. Bruno, what do you got this week?
Okay. Shit. Do we want to start with me? I might get on the soapbox for a second.
No, get on the soapbox.
So you guys sent me on a bit of a rabbit hole, roughly about a month ago, as I started getting into Ryan Gosling after watching Barbie and watched Drive, which I still think is like one of his best performances to date, and like is starting to become one of my favorite movies. But I started watching a lot more Ryan Gosling, and I tried explaining this a little bit earlier to Deepak, where I'm starting to get the notion that like he's not getting enough credit, at least in my personal opinion. I've been watching a few things differently. I've watched Blue Valentine, which I don't think was on the list you guys gave me. Lars in the Real World, which I also don't think was on the list you guys gave me. But then I watched The Nice Guys, which I thought was really, really good, and I thought he did an amazing job of just playing like a complete screwball private eye opposite of like a much more serious and older Russell Crowe. I thought he did a really great job. But what I mostly wanted to talk about was George Clooney's Ides of March from 2011. That movie almost looked like when I finished watching it, and just thank you, Deepak. Deepak, can you read off the cast for me really quick off of that
Yeah,
cover?
Jesus. Let's go. Ryan Gosling, George Clooney, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Paul Giamatti, Marissa Tomei, Jeffrey Wright, Evan Rachel Wood.
Thank you. So I entirely pictured the pitch meeting for this movie as George Clooney going, let's take this young upcoming actor and surround him with all of this talent. Put him in only like one-on-one scenes with all of them. Let him absorb all of that talent and carry this movie with him. And Ryan Gosling understood that assignment like a motherfucker, and took that entire movie and just carried it with all of those scenes, from like Philip Seymour Hoffman to Jeffrey Wright to George Clooney. I just thought he did an astounding like performance throughout all of that. And it comes back to a comment that I had about Zac Efron in Iron Claw, a comment that people have had about Paul Giamatti in Holdovers, and a comment that people are having right now about Anya Taylor-Joy in Furiosa. It's not really just like how he's doing like monologues or dialogue or anything like that. It's the acting in the eyes. And it's also something that he does a really good job with in Drive. And it's just really been like, sorry for the pun, but like eye-opening to me as like the range that he has as an actor. From just like not just doing just like peak comedy stuff like Barbie, but all even doing like stuff like Ides of March, for example, or even Blue Valentine, which was another one that I had seen.
Yeah, it's a really good movie, really good political thriller, but also more than that, just like kind of a character-based kind of DC insider story. And he's really good in it, like you said. Stacked cast, but he goes toe-to-toe with each and every one of them.
For people who aren't aware, like Ides of March is based on a Broadway play that I have actually like read in its entirety called Farragut North.
And you know who played who played the part on Broadway?
No, I don't. I mean, I know Chris Pine played on one of them.
Yeah, Chris Pine.
Yes. Yeah. And then, but just for people who don't know, the synopsis is basically just following a campaign manager for a governor trying to be president, and he just stumbles upon some like interesting information along the way that he's just always contemplating on what to do about it. And I thought that was and I thought they played all of that very well.
Ryley, what do you got?
There's a movie currently available on Amazon Prime. It is a future relic of the romantic comedy reboot. It is called The Idea of You. It stars Anne Hathaway and some himbo. The basic idea is that this man is supposed to be a sort of member of a sort of in fiction One Direction. However, he reads like a fucking ox, and we're supposed to believe that Anne Hathaway is beyond her prime in some way. All of this is sort of jumbly and weird. I think at the core, there's a really solid romantic comedy between the two of them, but I think that the movie dresses it up in a lot of weird, silly ways that sort of distract from the overall message. I would not say that this movie is in any way a perfect romantic comedy, but I do think for those of us who are attending to the rom-com rebirth that is sort of happening right now, The Idea of You on Amazon Prime is a must-watch just for the ongoing chronicle, which I am certainly a part of, and I want to shout out to anyone who hasn't heard of this one. This goes along in our diary, along with that Jennifer Lopez concert movie and
Marry Me.
Time Top Gun and Big Titties fell in love.
For anyone wondering, and anyone who cares,
Anyone but you.
The himbo's name is Nicholas Galaxy.
Fine.
I have Woman of Straw, a movie from 1964, starring Gina Lollobrigida and Sean Connery. 64 was a big year for Connery. He had Goldfinger, which remains his best Bond movie, and the one that really took the franchise to a new level. He had Marnie when he worked with Alfred Hitchcock. Not a great movie. He also had this, which is kind of a little English thriller that is really, really good. Up until the last couple minutes where you can feel the censor board wanting a very tacked on ending that kind of made things a little bit nicer and pat more than they should have maybe been, but still worth a watch. It's available to stream on Amazon Prime right now. Coincidentally, Imprint, the label in Australia, just announced a pretty extensive looking Blu-ray edition for this, but Kino put it out in the US maybe 10 years ago. I think it's out of print now, so it might be hard to find, but it is streaming on Amazon Prime, and I would give it a watch. It's a pretty twisty little thriller. All right, that's the show for this week. Thanks for tuning in to Watchmen Reviews. Remember, if you guys subscribe to Nerded Here First at NIHF.com for $5 a month, you get access to the video feed where you get to see us on camera, and we are really worth just about $5 a month. On top of that, we have tons of other content that are coming. I'm going to hand it over to Ryley now to do kind of a little bit of around the horn on what's going on with the site that you guys can look out for, and also just kind of give us the end credits here. Ryley?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have new shows coming. Obviously I've been shanghaied into playing tabletop role-playing games with Bruno, Sterling, and Jackson. We are, absolutely, Bruno showing off the dice here. We are getting into the Monster of the Week tabletop system. where I am playing a cool future angel. So dial in there to learn more. At the same time, you can stay on board to this feed to hear Deepak and I talk about movies. That's just going to get more cool and funky every week as we start to bring on more and more guests. And I guess the last thing I want to plug is that you can follow us on social media at Nerded Here First or at NIHF, wherever you get the cool shit. And we hope you enjoy it. And as always, turn in next week to her.